So we're going to be in Exodus chapter 3 and 4. We were in 3 last week, but we're going to go back a little bit today as well. Every one of us, every person that is born on this planet is created with purpose. You have a calling on your life. There is no exception to that rule. Every person, God does not put a random person on here that is purposeless. Every person is called to something, to do something for Him. Now, not every person walks in that. Not everybody steps into it. Not everybody receives it. But the truth is, God created you to fulfill a purpose that only, listen to me, that only you can fulfill. Amen. He didn't create you that, and yet there's a purpose on your life and He wants somebody else to step into it for you. He wants you to step into the purpose that He created you for. That's right. And if you don't do that, two things happen. The first one is you miss out. You miss out on the blessings of God. You miss out on seeing His faithfulness, His power, His love and grace and mercy. You miss out on so much when you're not stepping into what He's called you to do. And the second thing is other people miss out. God created people to need you. Now, the enemy is really, really good at trying to convince us that that's not the case. And he's filled our minds with lies to tell us. In fact, some of you have heard this lie many, many times. The world or my family or my friends would be better off without me. And that is a lie from the enemy, straight from the enemy, because God created you to have purpose, to live. And if you don't live in that purpose, you're going to have an emptiness inside of you like no other. Because you will be searching for that meaning. You will be searching for that purpose. You will be wanting something more, but never being able to attain it. And many of us have lived that life, and it's not fun. When you're chasing after something that will fill up that emptiness, or maybe take away the pain, or whatever it is. But the only thing that will fulfill that and give you what you need is Jesus. But it's not just Jesus in the sense of, okay, now I believe in Him and I accepted Him and now I'm going to heaven, because there's a lot of people that are going to heaven, but they're living miserable lives. The joy that Heather B. was talking about in her devotional, that comes from stepping into more than just your ticket to heaven. That steps into, Lord, I will do whatever you call me to do. I will get up in front of a room full of people. I will step out of my comfort zone. I will do whatever you ask me to do. I will worship you when things are horrible in my life. I will choose joy when there is no reason to, really, around me in my circumstances. I'm going to follow that. I'm going to hold on to it no matter what. But you gotta choose to step into it. And I talk about choices a lot. But the reason is because they're so important. You have the power to determine what direction your day goes. Every single day. Whether you're going to choose to follow the will of the Lord, even if nobody else is. Everybody around you is grumbling and complaining and gossiping and in the pit of negativity, and you jump in that pit with them, your day's probably not going to go very well. But if you have all these horrible things going on around you and you choose to still praise the Lord, you're in prison. In the pit of someplace I certainly don't want to be. But you're in that prison and yet you're still choosing joy. God will be there with you, and He will break you out of the chains, even if they're not physical chains. He will break off the chains of your heart to set you free to worship Him. So today, wherever you're at, step into everything that God has called you to do. Now, Moses, in chapter 3, we hear that God has called him to go to deliver God's people, the people of Israel, and He wants him to go before Pharaoh and be his representative. Now, Moses is one guy that you and I should be able to understand maybe better than a lot of other people, because Moses doesn't just say, "Here am I, send me, Lord." He comes up with just about every excuse in the book. Why not? Why it shouldn't be him. And it's all rooted in one thing. Maybe two things. Selfishness and insecurity. Selfishness and insecurity will keep you from the calling that God has for you in your life. It almost kept Moses in his situation. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, we find the first excuse of Moses. He says, "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?'" Now, every one of these excuses, there are 5 of them, by the way. Every one of them you and I have used, whether we recognize it or not. It may be a little bit different, might have a little different wording or twisting on it, but you and I have used these excuses in some way, shape, or form. And the first one is, who am I? I'm nobody. Nobody should listen to me because I am not worth listening to. I'm not qualified. And we're going to come back and we're going to look at the responses to God, but I just want to go through these excuses first. The next one's found in verse 13 of chapter 3. It says, "Then Moses said to God, 'Indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say, well, what is His name? What shall I say to them?'" In other words, he says, I don't even know enough to be able to be your representative. I don't even know what I'm going to say. And I'll probably mess it up. I'll probably say the wrong thing. This one is one that we see a lot. And let me back up for just a moment to excuse number 1. Because I believe that in almost every excuse that we give, there is a lie of the enemy that's attached to it. And for this one, who am I? The lie would be, I am insignificant. I'm a nobody. I don't matter. Those are several different lies that all say the same thing. I don't matter. Nobody wants to listen to me or hear me, or I'm a nobody. Who am I? Number 2, the lie is this: I'm not smart enough. And that one, I'm amazed at how many people battle that lie. I've battled that lie. And comparison is often our worst enemy in that regard, because we can look at somebody and feel like they're more qualified, or that they know more, or they're better for the situation than us. But we say this on a walk to Emmaus a lot. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And so your answer is not found in who you are. Okay? We'll get to that here in a minute. But I don't know enough. What will I say? The next one is found in Exodus 4, verse 1. It says, "Then Moses answered and said, 'But suppose that they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say the Lord has not appeared to you.'" No one's going to listen to me. No one's going to believe me. I don't have that one up there, but that is really a lot of it. He says, what if they don't even believe what I say? Some of you, when you've been asked to give a devotional or share your testimony or whatever, there's a lot of doubts and fears and lies that the enemy brings on you to get you to not want to share. Because you feel like if you say it, it's not going to do anybody any good. They'll tune you out. They'll wish that somebody else was speaking. This one also goes to the fact that you feel like you have no value. That's the lie, is that I have no value. I have nothing to contribute that would be worth hearing. Exodus 4:10 is our next one. Then Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." He basically says, I stutter. I can't even speak clearly. People aren't going to be able to understand me. Why would you pick me? Now, it may not be for all of us. It may not be that you don't speak clearly. There may be a lot of fill in the blanks that you could put in there. It may be that you're blind. Thankfully, David doesn't use that, but the enemy could use that against him as an example. Whatever your ability is that you're struggling with, feeling like you're enough with, that's what the enemy's trying to get you to keep you from focusing on that so that you don't step into the calling that God has for your life. Now, the lie on that one is that there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. A lot of times this is in regards to shame, the things that we've done and the shame that comes on us, and we feel so broken. Sometimes, though, it is a physical handicap or struggle that we face, dyslexia, whatever it is, that thing is not greater than God. But sometimes we use it as an excuse so that we don't have to be used of God in the way that He wants to use us. And then the fifth one is found in 4:13. But he said, "Oh my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send." I don't want to, Lord. I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. Please get somebody else to do it. And if we're real, every one of us has been in this boat. The Lord has asked us, the Lord has told us to do something. And we really, all the other excuses sometimes are offered up, but this is really the reason that we're offering everything else up, is because we simply don't want to. Sometimes we do want to, and the other excuses are the struggle that keeps us. But sometimes all of the other excuses are just to hide the fact that I don't want to do it. Lord, anybody else but me. Surely you can get somebody. And the Lord kind of gets a little frustrated with him. And He does kind of meet him halfway. And He says, I'll let Aaron be your spokesperson. But He doesn't. I'm not letting you off the hook. You're going to have to be my man. You're going to have to go before Pharaoh. Aaron will be with you. And he will speak to the people. But you're going to tell him what to speak, because I'm going to tell you. And God will use other people to help you with your struggles. All of us, we need... My goodness, I would not be the person that I am today without Heather. I would not be the person that I am today without you guys and the people that God has positioned in my life, because I need what you have to offer me. But God can put everybody that I need. He can give me everything that I need. But it does not change the fact that I'm going to have to choose to be willing to do what He's asked me to do. Okay? Now, let's go back to excuse number 1. In verse 11, that was where the excuse was. But I want to focus on God's response to each one of these excuses. Verse 12, to this one where Moses says, "Who am I?" He says, I will certainly be with you. God says, I will be with you. And this will be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people up out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, he says, who shall I say to him? That gets us to the next one. But the first one is, I'm with you. Who am I? You are my child. And I will go with you every place that you go to. Everything that you do, I'm going to be right there. You're not in this alone. You're not on the boat by yourself. I am with you. And then we also know right on this one, it kind of goes with number 1 as well as number 2. Because he says, I don't even know what to tell them. I don't even know who to tell them that you are. And he says, and we talked about this last week, he says, tell them I am. I am. And we talked about last week about how God is everything that we need Him to be. He is enough. He is greater than any obstacle that I face. He is the provision that I am lacking. He is the healing for my pain. He is the courage that overcomes my fear. He is everything that I need Him to be. And when Jesus said, it is finished, He says, I have accomplished every single thing that you will ever need. He is enough. He is I am. Now this one answers his question of I don't know enough, because he says it's not about what you know. It's about me. But it also answers the first one. When Moses says, who am I? God says, you may not be enough, but I am. And if you'll trust me, I will get you through this. It'll be my strength and my power and my wisdom. So whatever you are struggling with right now, stop trying to do it on your own. Trust Him. Give it to Him. Let go of the pain. Let go of the unforgiveness. Let go of I'm a failure. Let go of the lie that nobody cares. Because God cares. And He says, I see you and I care about you. He says, I am. I am. So, 4:1. Moses says, they may not even believe me or listen to me. And this is God's response. So the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a rod. He said, cast it on the ground. So he cast it on the ground and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. And he reached out his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Furthermore, the Lord said to him, now put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand in his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. And he said, put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and he drew it out. And behold, it was restored like his other flesh. Then it will be, if they do not believe you nor heed the message of the first sign, that they may believe the message of the latter sign. So God says, I will give you the power to show people that I'm with you. We see it today through deliverance. We see it in healing. And I know that not everybody gets healed. I understand that. There's more to it than just as simplifying as I'm making it. But what I'm saying is God testifies to Himself. I don't have to defend God. I don't have to prove God. I just have to be a willing vessel that demonstrates God's love and power to other people. And if I will do that, but we've got a lot of people that feel like we have to defend Him. He says, you just do what I ask you to do. That's all I need you to do. God doesn't need a defender. We do, but He doesn't. He says, you just be obedient. And he says, I want you to take this rod, and he throws it on the ground and it becomes a serpent. Now that's interesting. Why in the world would God choose a serpent to come from this rod? Now the rod represents authority. Because he says, I have authority over the enemy. That's why it became a serpent. And when he wanted it to, he took it by the tail and it became a rod again. He says, there's no enemy on this planet that is stronger than I am. No one has authority over me.
That's right.
But I've given you authority. Luke 10:19. I've given you authority over the enemy. So that wherever you go, whatever he brings against you, you can overcome it. And you don't have to be defeated by it. Now you can let him defeat you in those situations. But you shouldn't. You don't need to just bow down and cow to what he's doing. You need to rise up and you need to say, not today, Satan.
That's right.
I'm not taking it anymore.
That's right.
And if you throw one more thing at me, I'm going to praise the Lord even greater.
Amen.
I'm going to worship harder.
Hallelujah.
I'm going to get in my word instead of whining. I'm not going to get in the pit of self-pity. I'm going to let faith rise up in me and say, God, I believe you're greater than whatever the enemy is throwing at me.
Yes.
That rod represents authority, and we need to use the authority of Jesus in our life on a daily basis. But sometimes, if we're really honest, I'm guilty. Sometimes we're too lazy to use that authority. Sometimes we just give in. And we stop fighting. We don't get in the Word. We don't pray. We don't worship. Let's turn that around. Let's turn that around. When I'm in my darkest moment is not the time to give in. It's the time to rise up. It's the time to step into a new day, to burn the ships, to do whatever it takes to keep moving forward because God has good things for me. And I don't want to miss them. I don't want to miss them. And then, of course, the hand. He says, I'm greater than any physical ailment that you're going to struggle with. And it's a demonstration of it. And you and I, there are going to be things that we battle and face. But overall, God needs us healthy to be effective in His kingdom. And we need to believe in His healing power, and it needs to be demonstrated not only in our lives, but in the prayers that we pray for other people and the miraculous power that God channels through us into other people. God wants us to be healthy. Okay. 4:10. Lord says, I'm not a good speaker. I stutter. I'm slow of speech and tongue. And the Lord said, who has made man's mouth? This reminds me of Job a little bit. Kind of puts him in his place. It's like, what are you going to believe is greater? Your speech impediment or me? Because I'm the one that created your mouth. And if I want you to speak through it, I'll let you speak. But you got to trust me and you got to believe me. And in this situation, he's saying, you've got a choice. You can let your fear overtake you. And by the way, one of the greatest things that he's worrying about in that one is the fear of man. I'm going to sound like a fool, Lord. I'm going to be stuttering over my words. I'm going to be falling over them, and people are going to laugh at me. I really think that's a lot of what he's struggling with here. Is what are they going to think when they look at me and they see what a mess that I am? And the Lord said, I made your mouth. Whatever you're struggling with, He says, I made you. I made you and I can help you overcome it. But you're going to have to trust me. He says, who has made man's mouth, or who makes the mute deaf, the seeing or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth. And I will teach you what you shall say. That's a good verse to underline right there, by the way. I will be with your mouth. I probably should pray that some days. Lord, be with my mouth. He says, I will be with whatever physical struggle you're facing. There have been days when I have had no strength, I have had no energy, and people still needed something from me. Ever been there? You had nothing left to give. You were at the end of your rope. You were done. But when you rely on the Lord, He says, what does He say? He says, I will renew your strength like the eagle. Strength is going to rise up in you. But you got to rest in Him. You got to trust in Him. If you give in to that weakness, if you let the lies of the enemy overtake you, you're not going to be able to step into the supernatural strength that lies on the other side. And a lot of times it lies on the other side of trusting the Lord, of faith, of worship, of joy, all of those things that we've already mentioned. You got to press in and you got to press on. And when you do it, God will meet you right there. And He will help you with whatever you need. Whatever it is that you need, He will supply it. Why? Because He is the one that created us. And when I am weak, He is strong. So if I give in to the weakness of my body, I'm listening to the wrong voice there. If the Lord's called me, now there's also a time to say no. There's also a time to rest. So I'm not saying you've always got to be going and doing. But what I am saying is that if you're at the end of your rope and God says there's still more, you got to tap into the more, His supernatural more, because it doesn't come from anywhere else. Amen. And you're going to be dry and empty and burned out if you don't tap into His more and you try to carry it on your own strength. $4.13. Lord, I don't want to. Just send somebody else. Send somebody else. How does the Lord respond on this one? So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. That's how He responded. Whew. I don't want the anger of the Lord kindled against Curtis. But that's what happens when God commands us to do something and we refuse. When we become defiant and we're like, Lord, yeah, I've given you all these other excuses, but it's basically, I just don't want to. There's somebody else that can do it. If you want the blessings of God, they come through obedience. If you want the favor of God, it comes through obedience. And then, of course, He does say, okay, but He does it. I mean, I'm not happy with you, Moses. I will do something that helps you, but this isn't what I really wanted. And you know what? I think that sometimes that's where we are. I think that we step into partial obedience, partial blessing, partial favor, but Moses came out of this eventually. But right here, he just doesn't want to. But God still, this is how patient He was. Even in His anger, He says, okay, I'll give you Aaron. And Aaron will help you. But He did not let him out of his obligation, his responsibility. He says, I'm going to let you, I want you to walk in your calling. Now, okay. Whew. God is not concerned with your comfort level. He is concerned with whether you obey Him or not. That's what God is concerned about. He loves you, but He loves you with an expectation that your love is going to lead to obedience. Your faith will never grow if you're comfortable. This country has entirely too many comfortable Christians.
That's right.
God wants you to feel unqualified. He wants you to feel like it's bigger than you. Why? So that you'll rely on Him. If you're comfortable, you don't need God. We're not going to say it that way. But if I'm comfortable, I can do it on my own. Faith does not ever need to be exerted in comfort. But when you're uncomfortable, oh Lord, I don't know if I can do this. I need you. I got to have you. God is not concerned with your comfort level. He's concerned with whether you obey Him or not. And, just because you are uncomfortable with something does not mean it is not God's will.
Amen.
Because, see, this is what we do, right? We talk about having peace or unpeace. And there's a time for that. There's a time where, I know this is not God. There is definitely an unpeace. But sometimes we cover it up with, I just don't want to. I'm not comfortable with this, so surely it's not God asking me to do it. No. Just because you're not comfortable with it does not mean that God's not in it and that He's not calling you to it.
That's right.
This is the day to get out of your comfort zone. This is the day that you say, Lord, even if you ask me to do this, I'll do it. I'll do it. Whatever. That's a big word right there. Whatever you ask, Lord, I'll do it. Now, you can pray that prayer, and you can mean it with all your heart. But then God will ask you to do something that will make you wonder if that was the right decision or not. Oh, it sounded good at the time. But I didn't know you were going to ask me to do this, Lord. Goes back to that book I'm going to write one of these days. Anything but that, Lord. Anything but that. And it's sometimes true that we can't handle the truth. But more often than not, we just don't want to know the truth. The truth, everything that Moses was trying to cover up, yeah, those were true excuses. But I really think it simply boiled down to, Lord, I don't want to do this. I do not want to do what you have called me to do. That's me. I ran from my calling for years. God called me to be a minister, and I did not want to do it. I didn't. I was like, Lord, anything but that. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. But don't ask me to do that. Because I had plans. I had things I wanted to do. Lord, I've got things that if I do this, I'm not going to be able to do this. And so what I was doing is saying, Lord, I love you, but you're not as important as I am. And I was pushing Him down, and I was elevating myself. Did I really love the Lord by showing Him that way? No. Because Jesus says, if you love me, you're going to keep my commandments. You're going to do what I ask you to do. Not in an earning it kind of way, but in a demonstration of love. He was patient with me. Many of you know my story. He was patient with me. And I had to have that big fish moment where I got swallowed up and my plans came to nothing. They crumbled right before me. And I got to the place of brokenness and I said, Lord, okay, if you want me to do this, you've got to make the way. And I got to the place, and I think there's somebody or some people here this morning that you need to get to the place where you're willing to get past the I don't want to. What is God calling you to do with your life? Not just today, with your life. What is your ministry? What is your sphere of influence? God can expand it. He can change it. I'm not saying, but have you asked Holy Spirit, what is the calling on my life? And are you willing to step into it even if you don't want to? God can handle I don't want to. Because what overrides I don't want to is I love you more, Lord. I don't want to do this, but I love you more. And I'm willing to do it anyway. Because I know that you're going to be in it with me. And you're going to help me. And you're going to help let me learn the lessons. I stand before you today, and I'm so thankful for what God did in my life. I'm so thankful that I'm a minister. I can't imagine my life any other way than what it is now. And sure, there are bumps, and there are mistakes, and there are struggles. But I am so thankful. I am so fulfilled And I have so much joy and peace. And it comes because I made that choice to submit and surrender in obedience out of love for Him, to say, okay, Lord, I will do this. I gave probably a whole lot more excuses than Moses did to keep from stepping into it. But when I finally did, what I found was there's nothing that could satisfy me the way that He did. Because that's what I was created for. That's what you were created for, is the calling on your life. And when you step into it, it is wonderful. It's not always easy. Sometimes it is hard. But it's worth it. And it's rewarding. And people will be blessed, and you will be blessed. Obedience is the best way. God has a calling on your life that only you can fulfill. Nobody else can do it. Not the way that you can. Not the way that He created and designed you. Sure, you might drop the ball and somebody can step in and do a job, but it won't be the job that you were created for. He will be with you. He will empower you. He will equip you. Your job, and my job is simply to submit and obey.
Amen.
You want a successful life? Success is not measured by how much money you make. The world's view of success is.
That's right.
God's view of success has nothing to do with your influence, your power, your money. All that matters to Him is if you're obedient. But we've also talked about this, and one quick note on here as we wrap this up. It's not just obedience, it's joyful obedience.
Amen.
Because remember, out of Deuteronomy, there were curses that came upon God's people because they obeyed, but they didn't do it with the right heart. And you remember in one of the letters to the churches in Revelation, He says, I know your works. You're doing the right thing, but you've lost. This is Ephesus. He says, but you've left your first love. You're doing the works, but your heart's not in it. You got to do it for the right reason. Love is the only motivation that matters. And with love comes joy and peace. Our job is to submit and obey. Today, lay down your will and your I don't wanna, and let the Lord have it. And say, Lord, whatever it is. If this is the road that you've called me on. Think about that song, Abraham. You called me from my home. And on this altar, I'm going to lay down my flesh and bone. I'm going to lay down everything that I think is important to me. Abraham literally laid down his own flesh and bone. His son. The only reason you do that is because you trust and you love. Amen. And the Lord's calling us to do that too. Okay? I'm going to play a song in just a minute. And as we play that song, I just want you to let the Lord minister to you. I want you to hear Him say how much He loves you. You know, we sang in the early worship, the last song that we played, it was actually, I was going to cut it off, but it started playing before I could get it cut off, and I just knew I was supposed to let it play. But the song was Good, Good Father. And it's a wonderful song. But you know, there is a line in there that has always bothered me. Because in the line he says that you tell me that you are pleased. And we look at Moses and we can understand that sometimes God isn't pleased with us.
That's right.
Because we're doing it our way.
That's right.
And if you're doing it your way, it grieves the Father's heart. Because He knows there's so much more for you. This morning, lay that down and step into obedience, whatever it is.